This is Morning Edition on WRNI. I'm Bob C. Advocates for immigrants speak out against Governor Carcieri's executive order cracking down on illegal immigration. A new chief is chosen for the State Emergency Management Agency, and political scientist Darrell West is leaving Brown University. Just some of what we'll be talking about this morning on our political roundtable with Professor Maureen Moakley of the University of Rhode Island. Good morning, Maureen.
Good morning to you both.
And political reporter Scott McKay of the Providence Journal.
It's great to be here, Bob, and good to see Maureen again.
The governor last week issued an executive order to crack down on illegal immigration. Why is the governor raising this issue now, and what is likely to be the impact of this order?
Well, I think one of the reasons why he's probably raising it now is it certainly takes away from the fact that we are in an economic recession and that we have the highest rate of unemployment in all the 6 states. But in terms of the executive order itself, I thought there is a lot of support and there's a lot of fear about illegal immigration. And so by taking a stand like this, it allows him to take center stage when a lot of what's going on has to do with the budget and the legislature. As I said last week, there's basically 2 parts about it. Checking the data. In other words, you cannot be hired by the state or a vendor that works with the state unless you're checked out on a federal database, which is pretty accurate from what I understand. It's been quite refined. And as I said, I think that's a reasonable position. The second part of it is empowering the state police to work with ICE agents in terms of rounding up illegal immigrants in the course of their other duties. I think this is the one that invites racial profiling, and I think this is the aspect of it that's generated a really vocal response from a lot of fronts, most recently the religious community.
You know, it's funny because if you look at a lot of these things the governor's proposed, they're pretty reasonable, particularly such provisions as, when you got out of jail, for instance, if you're serving a sentence, checking the immigration status of the person who gets out of jail to ensure that they're deported and not sent just back into the community here in Rhode Island. That's fine. And a lot of the stuff Maureen talked about, making sure employers or the state government doesn't hire illegal immigrants, those kinds of things. The problem is with the state police, there's no way to enforce this. If you get pulled over, Bob, or you, Maureen, do you carry, I'm lucky if I remember to bring my license and have my valid insurance card in my glove compartment. Do you bring your passport or your birth certificate along? Could any of us prove our American citizenship if we were pulled over on a traffic stop, for instance? I don't think the average Rhode Islander can. And I think the only way to enforce this is to break the law, which, again, we have laws against racial profiling. You can't do that. The other thing that really struck me is when the Republican Party sent out an email to the Republican Assembly, a conservative group within the party, by the governor's new chief communications director, John Robitaille, where basically what they did was they said, okay, everybody call talk radio on Monday on their email list. So a lot of these talk show people are being played for as props in a political thing. And this made the governor's whole statement and whole press conference look like just a cheap, cynical political trick, frankly. And so we have a situation where there's no data to support any of this stuff. It's wonderful to talk about immigration, what it costs the taxpayers, but it's all anecdotal. There's no data. With all his budget geniuses and all the state bureaucrats, the governor has not come up with a number that says, okay, right care, treating illegal, undocumented immigrants on right care is costing Rhode Island taxpayers X million dollars. Without those numbers, without that clear policy thing, it's easy for the other side to say, Governor, this is just bigotry and a way for you to gain some political points, because it's all anecdotal. And it plays to people's fear, and I think that's the big problem. And again, if he wants to change the subject from a bad economy, he was the economic development governor. Then he was going to be the education governor. And now he's been governor 5.5 years. The latest round of test scores show that Rhode Island children are not doing all that well in education. So I guess now he's going to become the Border Patrol governor.
These religious leaders this week, a whole coalition, Jewish and Catholic, Bishop Tobin, very strong in their opposition to the governor's policy. He says he's willing to meet with them even though he disagrees. Do you think it will have any effect on him modifying his policy?
I mean, I think you might see some modification. When I listened, I didn't read the whole statements, but when I listened to some of the comments, it seemed that they were more concerned about the whole racial profiling thing, the whole thing about engaging the state police. So they may be willing to say, well, let's put the policy in place because it's incremental and it's a somewhat temperate policy of not having illegals work for state government and work on these other factors. The other big thing, which I think their criticism was very well taken, is you stand up in the State House and surprise everybody and make this executive order without consulting or reaching some sort of a consensus with some of these groups, and that's really not what good leadership is about.
No, that's why it looks like a political trick.
Well, the governor also